Hello friends, my name is Nerd Millard and welcome back. Do you remember a time back in the early 2010s when the iPad was just released? Busy parents quickly started using it to entertain their very young children, sometimes even babies, and experts in the field of child development were wondering whether this behavior would end up slowing the growth of their brain or somehow lead to terrible consequences.
What are all those touchscreens doing to all those growing little brains? Here's ABC's Juju Chang.
Thank you, iPad.
There are plenty of proud parents sharing their infants' touchscreen skills on YouTube.
Show me Word World.
Okay. Where you go?
Oh,
Okay. Right there.
good job.
Yeah.
Several years later, now that those babies are slowly entering adolescence, let's analyze what happened. Did they suddenly grow antlers? Do they now shoot laser beams from their eyes? As someone who's occasionally worked with children in the past few years, I can tell you that generally speaking, at least in developed countries, this generation, namely Generation Alpha, is perfectly fine. As for Millennials and Gen Z, there seems to be an ongoing debate as to the starting and ending birth years of Generation Alpha. To make matters simple, I personally say that it includes anyone born between 2010 and the mid-2020s. So what exactly sets Gen Alpha apart from Gen Z, Millennials, and previous generations? Let's explore my 10 personal insights and feel free to share your perspective. Here's a quick disclaimer. What I'm about to say doesn't necessarily apply to all members of Generation Alpha. It's only based on my own personal observations, which I believe to be relatively accurate. For Generation Alpha, the internet is as natural as the air they breathe. Although they're not legally allowed to have social media accounts until they reach the age of 13 in most situations, many children from Gen Alpha manage to bypass that rule due to poor parental supervision. Unfortunately, at such a young age, they're very vulnerable to the dangers of social media. Over time, as they navigate these online platforms, the vicious rules of this virtual universe become embedded within their way of thinking, and with all the likes, followers, challenges, hashtags, and filters they encounter on a daily basis, Gen Alpha's perception of themselves has certainly been altered or even deteriorated in some cases. A serious conversation about body image and self-love might be required for them in the future. One thing Gen Alpha is clueless about in the world of social media is definitely Facebook. In fact, many of them don't even know how to spell it. This ancient platform, which was so commonly used back in the early 2010s, is now simply associated with boomers and grandparents from Gen Alpha's perspective. TikTok is currently Gen Alpha's favorite platform, and many use it to follow trends or as a search engine instead of Google. Thanks to the availability of the internet and their excessively educated millennial parents, Gen Alpha is extremely knowledgeable. They have access to so much information that even the traditional school system doesn't seem to satisfy their thirst for knowledge. It remains to be seen whether they're just as good at identifying fake and trustworthy information. Moreover, Gen Alpha is truly aware of environmental and social issues at a very early age, and many of them jump into the world of activism as soon as they develop a sense of responsibility for the future of humanity. It's still hard to tell whether they'll grow up to be more conservative or liberal, but I personally believe that they will be great leaders in the second half of the 21st century. Another interesting thing about Generation Alpha is that they have remarkable emotional maturity thanks to their millennial parents, who avoided the mistakes made by previous generations and actually took the time to prioritize the quality of education they give to their children while disrupting generational trauma and allowing them to freely express themselves. Many members of Gen Alpha tend to prefer online-based and virtual forms of entertainment. Some of them lived through the Pokemon Go craze and the sudden popularization of augmented reality. One iconic example that many of them experienced is the Travis Scott astronomical concert on Fortnite. Those who attended this event always say how memorable it was. In many cases, Gen Alpha grew up watching nursery rhymes and cartoons on YouTube like Cocomelon and Peppa Pig, or just regular YouTube and streaming content in general since many families decided to get rid of cable television. Many other role models are content creators like YouTubers, Instagram influencers, TikTokers, and streamers on Twitch. Japanese animation, otherwise known as anime, also tends to be very popular among Gen Alpha. In fact, many of them get their morals and values from anime when parents are too busy and when there's no religion or social structure to play that role. Internet memes are at the core of Gen Alpha's sense of humor. The subtle things that make them laugh might be difficult to grasp for previous generations.
お前はもう死んでいる。何？
Although Gen Z and younger millennials could potentially understand and enjoy the same memes. Many eras can be found in meme theory: the experimental era, the classic era, the rage era, the dank era, the surreal era, and the post-irony era. However, one major historic meme Gen Alpha doesn't know about is the Harlem Shake from the early 2010s, and you may feel like an archaeologist trying to explain it to them.
And do the Harlem Shake. Child. Anyway, so.
When it comes to gaming, Gen Alpha missed out on the best era of games that were not full of microtransactions and DLC. Many of them grew up playing mediocre money-grabbing games on their parents' iPad, or watching other people play games on Twitch or YouTube, and they may experience an unusual feeling of nostalgia for an era of gaming they did not enjoy, where different consoles, very authentic, with interesting gameplay, like the Game Boy, the Nintendo DS, and the PSP were more commonplace. For some reason, many members of Gen Alpha enjoy playing with slime, puppets, or even fidget spinners at some point. They're simply addicted to these tactile toys that provide sensory stimulation and stress relief. In a socio-economic system that demands so much from their parents, it might not be that much of a surprise that some of the anxiety they experience is transferred over to their children, who end up using sensory stimulation as a coping mechanism. Another theory I have is that many kids from Gen Alpha don't get to play outside and experience the real world as much as previous generations, so they tend to overcompensate for the lack of mental and physical stimulation with these toys. Generation Alpha had to survive the great school disruption brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, and aside from having to wear masks and attend chaotic online classes, all the social distancing measures that were put in place to prevent transmission may have left a significant impact on their development. The fact that children from high-income families had more resources to pursue high-quality education, while other less fortunate kids struggled to find ways to keep on learning, may have widened the wealth gap even more for generations to come. I personally believe Gen Alpha's resilience will even out these inequalities over time, but we may have to wait and see what will happen eventually. Roblox is one of Gen Alpha's most popular games. It allows users to create and play many different games in a virtual world and relies a lot on user-generated content. Anyone can create a game and upload it on the platform for others to play. I believe what makes it so popular is its interactive nature and social aspect, since it's possible to chat, make friends, and build communities on Roblox while buying and selling virtual items. In a nutshell, Roblox is an important part of Gen Alpha's identity, just like Fortnite to a lesser extent. The oldest members of Generation Alpha were only about 6 years old when the Trump era began, a few months after the death of Harambe, so they've always lived through a very chaotic political atmosphere. They didn't really get to enjoy the very short, optimistic era of the early 2010s that culminated with the release of Daft Punk's Get Lucky. So with all the movements and turmoil they've witnessed during the late 2010s and the early 2020s, Generation Alpha has developed a pessimistic outlook on society as a whole. But they still believe that change is possible with the right technology, artificial intelligence, and proper mindset. They really want to save the planet, so they're just waiting until they're actually in charge. One of the most important issues Gen Alpha will run into in the future is the use of their image by their parents without their consent, posted on the internet, either for clout, for profit, or sometimes for no reason at all. Privacy and online identity are two major elements that will need to be addressed by psychologists and lawmakers to ensure that future generations are properly protected from their parents' uncalculated decisions. Think of all the baby pictures posted on Facebook, or the videos of children doing ridiculous things all over the internet. When they grow up, I'm pretty sure they would prefer that their image wasn't carelessly spread around online, especially if they're doing something they're not necessarily proud of. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video about Generation Alpha. Do you know any members of this generation? Have you made the same observations? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.